Stop everything you are doing for a moment and reflect with all the honesty possible. Who has never felt ashamed for losing control of their own emotions? Who has never shouted, cried, or exploded at a moment when they should have kept a cool head? And then realized that people began to look at them with disdain or even fear, but never with respect. Many try to convince themselves that it's human to feel too much, that being emotional is a sign of authenticity. But where is the respect they claim to deserve? Where is the authority that everyone wishes to have over their own life? Nietzsche would say that these people are nothing but slaves. And yes, this radical statement hurts, but it is necessary to listen to the end before criticizing it. Because for Nietzsche, those who cannot command themselves are doomed to obey. And no one respects those who were born to obey. The world is cruel to those who do not know how to master their own passions. It doesn't matter how talented, intelligent, or well-intentioned someone is. If a person is a hostage of their own emotional hurricane, they will be seen as weak, unstable, incapable of leading themselves, let alone leading others. Because there is a dark truth that no one likes to face. People do not respect those who are constantly dragged by their own impulses. But one should not confuse things. Nietzsche is not here to turn anyone into a feelingless robot, a cold, indifferent, or empty being. For him, emotional control is not the denial of emotions, but the almost artistic ability to shape them, to use them as instruments of one's own will, to transform fury into focus, pain into creation, fear into courage. And that is where the difference begins between the weak and the strong, between those who are commanded by circumstances and those who shape the world around them. This video is for those who are tired of being seen as explosive, unstable, or difficult. For those who feel, deep down, that they could be so much more, but sabotage themselves every time they lose their head. It is for those who know that living by impulses may bring some momentary relief, but it comes at a high price in the respect of others, and most importantly, in self-respect. And there is something that few have the courage to say. As long as someone does not master their own emotions, they will not earn true respect. Because those who cannot govern themselves have no authority to govern anything. And as Nietzsche reminds us, he who cannot command himself must obey. And this is the nature of all weak men. Are you ready to discover why losing control of emotions condemns so many to live small? And how to transform this raw energy that runs through the veins into personal power and genuine respect? Then it's time to follow through to the end. Because perhaps today, for the first time, many will understand that controlling one's own emotions is the key to achieving something that no one can offer: true respect. Some people see things incorrectly and confuse controlling emotions with repressing them, as if they were exactly the same thing. How many times do we hear that someone who masters their feelings is cold, distant, almost inhuman? How many times is someone who holds back tears or maintains a calm face in the face of anger accused of repressing themselves, keeping everything to themselves, or running away from their own truth? But this view, although it seems modern and sensitive, is nothing but a great misunderstanding. And Nietzsche would have been the first to laugh at this mistake. For Nietzsche, emotional control has absolutely nothing to do with suffocating what one feels. It is not about silencing the inner monster or pretending it does not exist. On the contrary, the philosopher saw emotions as vital, powerful, almost artistic forces that are an essential part of being human. He believed there is greatness in feeling deeply, but he also saw tragedy in living enslaved by these impulses. In Nietzsche's logic, mastering emotions means recognizing each internal shadow without fear or shame and deciding what to do with it. It is like the work of a sculptor. The raw marble is the emotions in their wildest state, Repressing would be hiding the marble in a basement, pretending it does not exist. Mastering, however, is sculpting, choosing shapes, giving contours, transforming raw material into something beautiful, strong, and respectable. Some think that feeling anger, sadness, or fear is a sign of weakness. For Nietzsche, this is a mistake. The problem is not in feeling, but in becoming a hostage to that feeling. The man who cannot contain himself when provoked, who fills with hatred and explodes, believes he is being true or authentic. But in reality, he is merely demonstrating that he has no control over himself, and therefore is not worthy of respect. Because anyone who can provoke someone can manipulate them. Nietzsche saw emotions as raw material for something greater. Anger can become focus. Fear, prudence, sadness, deep compassion, joy, creative energy. But all of this requires discipline, awareness, and above all, a will to power. One must want to shape their own chaos rather than be shaped by it. And this is the greatest difference between repressing and mastering. Repressing is burying what one feels until it explodes in an even more destructive way. Mastering is observing the emotion arising, feeling its strength, but deciding how, when, and if it will be expressed. It is choosing to transform the flame into light and not letting it destroy everything around. And if all of this sounds good, yet distant, it is because there is still something fundamental to understand. Where does this wild force that resides within each person come from? Why are emotions so powerful, capable of building empires or destroying them in an instant? Nietzsche had an answer for that. And it is exactly what we will explore in the next part. Emotions as forces ready to lift us up or crush us. Nietzsche believed that emotions are not just fleeting whims of the human soul. For him, each emotional impulse is a force of nature in its purest state, brutal, intense, irresistible. It is as if within every human being there are storms ready to form, earthquakes capable of shaking everything around, volcanoes on the verge of eruption. And in this scenario, the great risk is not in feeling these forces, but in being completely dominated by them. Many like to think they are rational, absolute masters of their own choices. But Nietzsche knew the uncomfortable truth. Most of what people do or say arises long before reason even has time to manifest. It is emotions that take the helm, often silently, dragging each person like a strong tide that no one can contain. Anger, for example, is one of those powerful forces. In an instant, it transforms breathing, hardens the gaze, clenches the fists. It is almost impossible to ignore the heat that takes over the body, the urgent desire to react, to hurt, to prove a point. But Nietzsche saw something beyond. He realized that although anger is destructive when unleashed without restraint, it also carries vital energy that can be transformed into courage or absolute focus. A man who can harness this fire and direct it toward a constructive purpose is seen as powerful. On the other hand, one who surrenders to the impulse, who breaks everything around or unleashes poisonous words, reveals only weakness and comes to be seen as unstable, untrustworthy. Fear is another gigantic force. It paralyzes, shrinks the shoulders, makes the voice waver. But Nietzsche did not see fear as an absolute enemy. For him, fear is also a tool of nature, a primitive alert that, if used wisely, can save lives and prepare someone for greater challenges. The problem arises when fear becomes the master of the house, governing decisions, preventing any bold step. At that moment, a man loses the respect of himself and others, as he demonstrates that he is not the master of his own destiny. Sadness, too, has depth and power. It is in this emotion that the capacity for compassion, reflection, and genuine empathy resides. But if someone dives so deep into it that they become lost, they come to be seen as fragile, unable to bear the weight of life. Nietzsche did not despise sadness. On the contrary, he saw it as essential raw material, which can become poetry, philosophy, art, but only if it does not become an emotional prison. In each emotion, Nietzsche identified a raw potential, an energy that could build or destroy. The crucial point is that such overwhelming forces, when not mastered, make the individual predictable, and a predictable person is easily manipulated. Those who lose control in the face of provocations surrender themselves to anyone who knows how to press the right buttons. Those who let fear dictate every choice are easy to dominate, and those who drown in sadness lose the strength to react to the world. For Nietzsche, these natural forces are not bad in themselves. The problem lies in allowing them to govern man, instead of being governed by him. And this distinction between those who react as puppets of their own emotions and those who transform them into instruments of creation is fundamental to understanding his philosophy. But who then can accomplish this feat? Who is capable of looking into their own chaos and shaping it into a creative force? Nietzsche had a clear answer: the active man. And it is about him that we will talk in the next part. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. For Nietzsche, humanity is divided, almost cruelly, into two types of people: the reactive man and the active man. This division is not merely a matter of temperament or personality, but a profound difference in how each individual deals with their own emotions, desires, and the stimuli of the world. The reactive man is one who lives at the mercy of what happens around him. He is a slave to the environment, to the gazes, to the words, to chance. When someone provokes him, he reacts immediately, sometimes with fury, sometimes with fear, sometimes with resentment. When praised, he fills with pride. When criticized, he sinks into shame. His moods rise and fall like a small boat amidst gigantic waves. There is no constancy, no solidity. He is shaped by facts, like pliable clay in the hands of others. Nietzsche saw the reactive man as someone who wastes his own potential, because those who live reacting never create. They are always too busy defending themselves, justifying, fighting shadows, or seeking approval. They are someone whose worth depends on the environment, on others' opinions, on the whims of the moment. And for that reason, they do not earn genuine respect. Because deep down, everyone realizes that it only takes an emotional push to throw them off balance, and no one respects someone who is easy to topple. The active man, on the other hand, is a different kind of creature. He also feels fear, anger, sadness, desire, but he does not become a slave to it. When provoked, he observes before acting. When filled with anger, he transforms that flame into fuel to achieve his goals. When he feels fear, he analyzes whether it is a useful warning or merely an obstacle to be overcome. His emotions are not denied, but used as tools. He is the sculptor of his own character, shaping even the most brutal forces that arise within him. The active man creates values, while the reactive man merely adopts ready-made values. The active shapes the world around him, while the reactive is shaped by the world. The active decides, the reactive reacts. And that is why, according to Nietzsche, respect and admiration naturally fall upon the active man, because he conveys inner strength, solidity, mastery. He inspires confidence. People may not fully understand where this aura of authority comes from, but they feel it, and they bow before it. Nietzsche believed that the active man is one who is in tune with the will to power. Not power in the vulgar sense of controlling people or gaining status, but power as a creative force, as the ability to transform oneself, to overcome limits, to give shape to one's own passions. He is an individual who not only lives, but leaves his mark on the world. And here lies the crucial point. No one is born entirely active or entirely reactive. This is an internal battle. It takes training, awareness, emotional discipline to become someone who uses their emotions instead of being used by them. But the effort is worth it. Because those who reach this level of self-mastery come to be seen as worthy of respect, and as someone capable of leading not only their own life, but also influencing and leading others. But there is something even deeper behind this distinction between acting and reacting. Because for Nietzsche, the inability to control one's own emotions reveals something much greater, an absence of the will to power. And it is precisely this connection that we will explore in the next part. For Nietzsche, behind all human strength or all weakness lies a fundamental principle: the will to power. And we are not talking here about power in the vulgar sense, as someone who seeks to dominate people, accumulate titles, or acquire wealth merely for status. The will to power, in Nietzschean philosophy, is something much deeper, almost biological. It is the vital force that drives human beings to grow, to surpass themselves, to expand their limits, and to assert their individuality in the world. Nietzsche saw this will as the essence of life. Everything that lives, according to him, wants to grow, wants to dominate its environment, wants to impose its form on the chaos that surrounds it. Plants grow towards the sun, animals fight for territory, humans create culture, art, and philosophy. All of this is the will to power in action, an incessant energy that refuses to remain small or limited. And here lies the crucial point. Those who do not control their own emotions reveal, for Nietzsche, a failure in this will to power. Because losing control is the opposite of exercising power over oneself. It is yielding to the brute force of instincts, like an animal that reacts without thinking. When someone explodes with anger, when they let themselves be consumed by fear, or when they get lost in endless sadness, they are showing the world, even without realizing it, that they cannot command even their own inner territory. And for Nietzsche, those who do not govern themselves have no right to govern anything else. This is precisely why genuine respect is never granted to those who live dominated by their own passions. Because respect ultimately arises from the perception of strength. And strength here is not physical brutality or violence. It is inner strength. It is discipline. It is self-control. It is the ability to remain steadfast when everything around tries to pull you away from your center. The man or woman who demonstrates self-mastery inspires confidence because they prove they can withstand pressure, that they do not yield to the first provocation, that they will not be easily manipulated by fleeting emotions. Nietzsche saw emotional outbursts as signs of weakness, not because he was opposed to passion, but because he believed that these outbursts reveal that the person is being lived by their emotions, rather than living their emotions consciously. The individual who screams, who despairs, who implodes or explodes without being able to choose their own reaction is, in fact, declaring to the world, "I have no control over myself." And this silent confession is the ruin of genuine respect. Furthermore, there is another even deeper aspect. Those who do not control their own emotions become predictable, and the predictable is easily manipulated. Nietzsche knew that society is often governed by those who know how to push the right buttons in others' emotions, whether through fear, wounded pride, or the promise of pleasure. The man who does not master his inner self is always vulnerable to the wills of others. He is a toy in the hands of whoever knows how to provoke him. And there is something almost tragic about this, because many of these people desperately desire respect. They want to be seen as strong, reliable leaders. But every outburst of anger, every moment of paralyzing fear, every emotional loss of control is a crack that destroys that image. In the eyes of others, they begin to appear childish, unstable, unworthy of trust. Nietzsche warns us that there is only one way to earn genuine respect: to demonstrate power over oneself. Those who prove they govern their own inner kingdom almost effortlessly gain the admiration of those around them. And there is nothing more magnetic than someone who maintains serenity even when the world seems to be on fire. This is true power, the kind that cannot be bought, only earned through discipline and will. But this leads us to another crucial question. Does mastering emotions mean living without feelings, cold, insensitive, distant from life? Or is there a way to feel everything, deeply, and still remain in control? What Nietzsche teaches us about this, we will explore in the next part. If what you're hearing resonates with you, you'll find real value in my ebooks. Beyond the Shadow breaks down Jung's core ideas, while Dialogues with the Unconscious gives you a 30-day path to apply them in your life. Both are linked in the pinned comment. There is a false belief that spans generations, the idea that controlling emotions means feeling nothing, living in an almost mechanical coldness, distant and disconnected from the world. Many believe that to master their own emotions, one would need to amputate part of their humanity, don an impenetrable armor, and suffocate any sign of vulnerability. Nietzsche, however, shatters this illusion with the force of a hammer. For him, true emotional control has nothing to do with killing feelings. It has to do with choosing them, with transforming them into tools of one's own will. In Nietzsche's view, feeling is inevitable. Emotions are part of what it means to be alive. They provide color, intensity, and purpose. Without emotions, life would be a monotonous succession of identical days, devoid of passion, art, or meaning. But there is a vast difference between living subjugated by emotions and using them as instruments to shape one's destiny. For Nietzsche, mastering emotions is about remaining sovereign within one's own inner castle. It is not about ignoring fear, anger, or sadness. It is about recognizing them, understanding them, analyzing them, and then deciding what to do with them. It is like standing before a wild animal. You either flee in panic or you learn to tame it, channeling its strength into something productive. Think of anger. Many see it only as destruction, but Nietzsche saw possibility. Anger can be a force that explodes, devastates everything, and leaves only ruins. Or it can be channeled into courage, into clarity to defend boundaries, into absolute focus to achieve something great. The question is, who is in command? The same goes for fear. It is one of the most primitive feelings deeply rooted in biology. It exists to protect, to alert, to keep the individual alive. But without mastery, fear turns into a prison. The person begins to avoid risks, suffocates dreams, flees from battles that could transform them. Nietzsche believed that fear, when recognized and faced, becomes strategic prudence and not cowardice. Even sadness, so often seen as weakness, can be transformed. For Nietzsche, there is greatness in melancholy. It can generate deep reflection, authentic compassion, sublime art. But only when it does not become an emotional swamp where the individual sinks and gets lost. True emotional mastery is not about suppressing anything, but about choosing when to feel, how to feel, and most importantly, how to express it. It is having the freedom to explode with joy when the occasion calls for it, to cry when the pain tightens the chest, but without allowing that pain to paralyze all existence. It is to remain steadfast even under provocation, not because emotions do not exist, but because one has decided that this is not the moment to let them speak. This is the supreme power of the active man, the ability to act and not just react, to make one's own life a work of art, where each emotion is a color consciously chosen to paint the picture. Nietzsche did not want to create apathetic beings. He wanted intense, alive, passionate men and women, but masters of their own helm. And there is a magnificent consequence of this self-mastery: respect. true respect, because those who demonstrate self-governance inspire confidence. People often know, without being able to explain, that there is someone solid, reliable, strong there. And as Nietzsche knew so well, only those who can overcome themselves can lead others, whether in a boardroom, in a relationship, or in the silent battle of everyday life. But it is not enough to understand all this intellectually. The question remains, how to take the first step towards this mastery? How to begin transforming internal chaos into creative power, into strength that earns genuine respect? This is precisely what we are going to unveil now. Nietzsche was never a thinker for fragile hearts. He spared no words, had no patience for comfortable illusions, and above all, despised any form of self-deception. And that is why his message about emotions remains so relevant, so cutting, even more than a century later. Because it forces us to look in the mirror and ask, who is really in control? Throughout this journey, we have seen that mastering emotions does not mean erasing them, nor putting on a mask of coldness. It means, above all, exercising sovereignty over oneself. It is recognizing that within every human being exists a whirlwind of natural forces, fear, anger, sadness, desire, passion, and that all of them are powers that can both destroy and build. And the difference lies only in who holds the reins. Nietzsche taught us that living dominated by impulses is to live small. It is to live predictably, manipulatively, vulnerably. It is to walk through the world with invisible signs hanging around the neck saying, "Here are my emotional triggers, press them whenever you want." And in that state, no one earns genuine respect. Because respect arises from the recognition of inner strength, the ability to stand firm even when everything around screams for chaos. But we also saw that Nietzsche was not an enemy of emotions. On the contrary, he saw them as creative instruments, as raw material for art, philosophy, and human greatness. For him, the active man, the one who shapes the world instead of being shaped by it, is the one who knows how to use his emotions as tools, not as shackles. It is the one who transforms anger into determination, fear into strategy, sadness into depth. Genuine respect, then, is not something that is demanded from others. It is something that is earned when one demonstrates, in a silent but absolutely perceptible way, that one is the master of their own inner territory. Those who master themselves earn, almost without words, the trust, admiration, and yes, the respect of those around them. But this journey is not simple. It requires courage, because it means abandoning the comfort of victimization, stopping blaming the world, circumstances, or external provocations. It means looking at the internal chaos and deciding to shape it. It means becoming the artist of oneself. And now, I want to provoke you. Yes, you who have made it this far, I want you to tell me, in which area of your life do you feel you most need to master your emotions? Is it at work, when someone provokes you? Is it in relationships, when insecurity speaks louder? Or is it with yourself, in the quiet moments when the internal shadows seem larger than anything? Write in the comments. Say where you feel you are losing control. Because writing is the first step to becoming aware, and awareness is the beginning of any transformation. And if this video made you reflect, don't stop here. There is much more to be said, much more to be revealed. Watch the next video. It is also important, because the path to self-mastery and earning genuine respect does not end today. It is just beginning. And if there is one thing Nietzsche taught us, it is that the will to power begins within each of us and manifests in every choice we make, even in the choice to continue learning.